joining us now, our Canucks reporter, one half of the rink-wide duo with Andrew Watt, and boy, have they been kept busy this week.
No kidding.
It is Mr. Jeff Paterson back here with Sekeres and Price. How we doing, Jeff?
I'm just frustrated. I'm tired of the noise in this market already, 4 games in. And I know some people think, hey, you guys thrive on this. No, I want to cover a good hockey club that doesn't have all this drama, particularly not this early in the season and players-only meetings and coach calling the team mentally weak and now targeted scratches and message sending and more collapsed leads and all. Like, there's just way too much noise around this group. And I don't know. I understand like the fire and the heat in this marketplace. Like, people are angry. They were promised better. They were promised different. And this just feels like an awful lot of the last decade so far.
At the risk of further drawing your ire, is the coach right? It's a fragile team, mentally weak team that can't get over setbacks.
Well, I mean, he says it after the loss in Washington, and then they go out and they do it again. They did, first period was solid. Paterson was flying again, and he's been really good and really consistent. And to build a 2-0 lead, and they get a shorthanded goal. Like, there was a lot going on in their favor, and they just cannot handle any success right now. And I get, like, you saw all the noise on social media too when the Canucks got up 2-0, all the jokes, and here they go again, and Columbus has them right where they want them. But I think there is now this element of truth to that clearly the Canucks don't have a belief in themselves that they can see this across the finish line. And so for 4 straight games now to do a lot of good things to get these leads, and then just not have sort of the self-belief, the professionalism, whatever the case, to be able to do the things necessary to get results. And then last night with a twist that the minute you think, oh boy, the bottom's falling out, oh no, they get a lead again at 3-2, and still that wasn't enough. So it's never dull around this group. We'll give them that. But, the noise isn't going to quiet down anytime soon. What quiets noise is winning, and they're 0 I mean, yes, they get a single point out of the overtime loss last night, but still looking for their first victory going into Minnesota. And you just wonder if they don't beat the Wild. First of all, there are only 2 teams below them in the standings. There's only 2 teams without a single point in the standings, and Minnesota's one of them. If Minnesota beats the Canucks outright, there will be 1 team of the 32 in the NHL below the Vancouver Canucks a week into the season, and that's San Jose. And you wonder when the Sharks are going to get their first victory, but we're still wondering when the Canucks are going to get their first victory.
What I'm about to ask you, I am 98% sure that I've asked you before. I'm getting serious deja vu feelings. But we asked during the summer and over the course of the not too distant past, who the core players are on this team, who the franchise players are. And there's a bunch of players a few players that I think Canucks fans can't imagine them being without over the next few years. Are you worried about those players? And I think they're talking about Demko, Hughes, Paterson. If we're sick and tired of these vibes, is there a risk that those players are sick and tired of these vibes and, may voice that sometime?
Yes, it's absolutely. And I think Elias Paterson did when Jim Benning was still at the helm a couple of summers ago when he talked about wanting to play for a winning franchise. And Hughes and Demko are locked up long term. Now, that may not affect this conversation, but we know that Elias Paterson is going to be back at the bargaining table as early as next summer. And like, I can hear people saying, Paterson, oh, you're so negative. Here you go. I'm just saying the blueprint is now in place with Matthew Tkachuk in Calgary. The Flames were a very good team. He looked like he was having individual success, team success. He felt otherwise and wanted to take control of his future. And I just think Elias Paterson is a shrewd young man and recognizes everything that's happening around him. You only get so many seasons in this league. And if this one gets off the rails, it wouldn't shock me to hear some of that bubbling to the surface, that Elias Paterson is starting to try to figure out what's in his best interest over the long haul here. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I just think that there is an example as recently as this summer of a high-profile, high-scoring guy that felt that he and his agent had the power and the leverage, and ultimately were able to broker a deal out of a place that looked like it should have been a pretty good fit for him. And so, you go back to the bubble, and there was so much excitement coming out of the bubble, and Paterson was a massive part of that, and first taste of playoff hockey, and there were so many good news stories around the Canucks coming out of the bubble, and then that fateful Thanksgiving Day with the tilted schedule and the free agency and the players that walked away, and And really, since then, it's just kind of in this spiral. And I know there was an air of optimism after Bruce Boudreau took over last year, but I don't know. A lot of that goodwill seems like it's going out the window here 1 week into this new National Hockey League season.
I listened to that from the two of you guys, and frankly, I cringe. Well, first of all, you're the pre and post game guys looking at the big picture and what it means. After 4 games, I can't believe we're already here. Which brings me to the Bodog poll question, Jeff. Is it too early to make major changes? I voted yes, just because we haven't even played a home game yet, but of course it's got to be balanced with the consideration of can't get buried in the playoff race early a second straight year. So where are you in terms of whether it's too early for a major change?
I'm going to say yes to that it does feel early. I don't think anything's going to happen on the road trip here. There's only the one game to go, and then as you said, they come back home. But if you look ahead a little bit, the home schedule, Buffalo, nice win in Edmonton last night. Sabres have won 2 of the first 3. I don't think that's as easy as Buffalo on your schedule in years gone by. And then Carolina's the next team in. That's certainly not going to be easy. Pittsburgh is in at the end of next week. So, the challenges don't get a whole lot easier, and especially when you're a winless team. I think every game presents its own unique challenges. So we'll see what happens. Again, sort of like last night in Columbus, Minnesota spinning its wheels off to a terrible start. So it should be 2 desperate teams. I'll give the Canucks every opportunity there. But I do think it's a little early for massive sweeping changes. And yet at the same time to see what I'm seeing and hear what I'm hearing. And then you think, all right, so Myers and Mikheyev, maybe the schedules got bumped up a little bit in terms of their rehab. They wouldn't have put them in if they weren't medically cleared, but it kind of felt like an airlift of the reinforcements. Well, guess what, guys? This is the Vancouver Canucks, save for Travis Dermott. Travis Dermott's the only piece, and I know Demko didn't play last night, but this is it. A week ago, you could have used some of the injuries, and we talked about them, excuse or reason. Outside of Travis Dermott, this is your Vancouver Canucks. What you see is what you get, and what you're getting right now isn't a 60-minute performance that has yielded a victory. And so I think that has to be mildly concerning, not only to the fan base, but to coaching and the management as well, that the excuses are out of the way, the reinforcements are back, and there's still these breakdowns that are costing the hockey club points in the standings and losses.
As Darren Dreger said to us on Connor Garland, he thinks it's a message scratching for both the player and the team. Anticipates Garland will be right back in there Thursday against the Minnesota Wild, but by the same token thinks that maybe Connor Garland just isn't a fit with Bruce Boudreau. That, maybe Connor Garland, and you've said this in the past, he's a tough guy to play with, Garland, because he's so unorthodox. What did you think of the scratch, and where do you think the Connor Garland as a Canuck file goes from here?
Yeah, well, I'm curious, and I would expect, and Bruce kind of hinted after the game last night, that Garland will get back in there, but then somebody else is going to have to come out, and we'll see if there's another message to be sent, or if they go the route of sort of conventional hockey wisdom and take maybe a Nils Aman out, a young guy. And I would have gone that way last night in Columbus. It was 3 games in 4 nights. Team had broken down in the third period. You have Curtis Lazar, who was signed, we all thought, to be the 4th line center. He's played the wing for the most part. You could have made that an easy swap, bring Oman out of the lineup, or Dakota Joshua, who's been fairly underwhelming and seems to be spending too much time on the seat of his pants. He's supposed to be the nail, or he's supposed to be the hammer, not the nail. And he was on the receiving end of the big hit there last night. So I think there were candidates that probably should have come out. I don't like message sending 3 games into the season, and I particularly don't like message sending when you give up 6 in Washington the night before, and Connor Garland's not on the ice for any of them, and hasn't been on the ice for a goal against in the 3 games that he has played. He's also scored in Philadelphia, and there's a lengthy list of guys that you expect to have scored goals for the Canucks that haven't done that. So why Garland was singled out, that's up to Bruce Boudreau, I suppose. But there's just, the underlying numbers have been pretty solid for Garland through the 3 games that he has played, and it just kind of felt like unnecessary to pick on one guy. We'll see how he responds. We'll see where it goes from here. But as to the other question about, him and Bruce Boudreau, yeah, I did wonder last year, because remember he had that 20-game stretch where the team was humming along, they were scoring, they were winning games, and he went 20 games as a top 6 forward without scoring a goal. So they were having all this team success, and he really wasn't contributing. And it wasn't that he wasn't playing hard and working hard. Hear me when I say that. But he's paid close to $5 million to put pucks in the net. And he went 20 games, a quarter of the season, without doing a pretty fundamental and important part of his job. And so you just wondered then, like, his name came up at times in trade talks, or at least trade rumors. And I wondered, does Bruce Boudreau see this as a team that could move forward without that player and still have the degree of success that they had over the final 57 games last year? So I'm not sure that a whole lot has changed 3 games into this season for Garland, 4 for the team. And the fact that he's the first guy that kind of bears the brunt of message sending, you do wonder if that isn't a continuation of some of that from last year.
I saw there was some online speculation that it was effectively a JT Miller scratch, that it was part of the JT Miller cohort getting scratched as a way to send a message to JT. Do you buy that?
Well, messages need to be sent to JT Miller because he hasn't been good enough, quite frankly, and he's not alone. But 2 ends of the ice, and for a guy that spent a lot of the offseason and after the contract talking about, giving up offense to focus on his defense, and there's just been way too many examples of him puck watching and standing around and not taking the right people and making the right plays, and he got bumped off the first unit of the penalty kill there last night, and sure enough, Paterson and Horvat combined on a short-handed goal, so there probably should have been a subtle message there as well to JT Miller. But, I think when I look positionally, I think JT Miller has underperformed in the first 3 games. I think Quinn Hughes just doesn't look his dynamic self that tilts the ice in the Canucks' favor. He picks up points because he's talented, and they play him a ton. And I kind of wonder, after he got his nose raked in Edmonton on opening night, and are there some lingering effects? Because in overtime, 1 minute and 26 seconds of 3-on-3, he's out there as they score the winner. And you want Quinn Hughes on the ice. He's a difference maker. He's easily the best defenseman they've got, but I just don't feel like he's tilting the ice in the Canucks' favor. And when he's out there, you want him to be the guy that is ending hockey games, and instead he's pulling the puck out of his net after yet another loss. And then I'd go a step further, and it was the right call to give him the night off, and Spencer Martin performed well. But I would say JT Miller, Quinn Hughes, and Thatcher Demko right now, a forward, a defenseman, and a goaltender that mean the world to this hockey club, and I don't think any of them has come anywhere close to playing his best hockey. And if that's the case, you know how much they rely on those 3 guys. And if they're not at their best, then it's going to be difficult for this team to win more than it loses.
Which is a more correct statement, though, that those mishaps from those key players are more a result of the lack of the team structure, and in other words, a little bit more towards the coach, or is that them trying to do too much because they know there's not much around them, and that's more on the management and how this team has been compiled?
Yeah, I think I shade to the latter there. And again, I'm not going to knock Quinn Hughes' effort. I mean, he's second to Drew Doughty in average ice time a week into the season, and he knows that he has to play a lot, even if he's not feeling his best. And remember, he missed some time there right before the season opener with an ailment of some sort, and then takes the stick across the nose and needed some stitches. And so I think it's been a difficult start to the season for Quinn Hughes, but when he's playing as much as he is, and they're leaning on him as much as they are, it's a reflection of what's around him. And I've got all the time in the world for Luke Schenn, but he shouldn't be a top 4 guy. Now, last night, he did drop lower in the lineup. Problem is, he's replaced by Tucker Poolman, who isn't the answer as Quinn Hughes' caddy and partner over the long haul. So, we can spend a lot of time talking about Connor Garland. I think the same things apply to Kyle Burroughs, who has literally fought for this team, takes on Nick Deslauriers in Philadelphia the same day that he scores, the only defenseman to score a goal for the Vancouver Canucks so far, plays 24 minutes in Washington, and then he comes out of the lineup as well. I didn't like that message. I don't know what it says to Burroughs, and I'm not sure what it says to other guys that are looking around and thinking, hey, this guy has busted his butt to prove that he's an everyday, every night kind of guy. And then on game number 4, they decide to take him out of the lineup. So, just a lot of questions, questionable decisions on the ice, questionable decisions when it goes into putting this lineup together, but also questionable decisions over the course of the summer. We all screamed from the top of the mountains here in Vancouver about addressing the defense core, and management elected to move forward with the group that they've got. And really the only move has been Riley Stillman, and he didn't look particularly good on the Johnny Gaudreau goal last night. So in some ways, they're reaping what they sow in terms of trying to run out this defense core and think that somehow it's going to be good enough most nights.
Well, let's ask you then, where was maybe the guy that's fulfilled his role the best on defense in Kyle Burroughs? Where was Jack Rathbone? Curious decisions for the lineup.
Very much so. I mean, they've used 8 defensemen now, 4 games into the season, and Rathbone isn't one of them, even though he's been on the roster the entire time. He got leapfrogged by Noah Juleson for a game when they, this lefty-righty thing. But again, I'm not sure that Riley Stillman has to have played in all 4 games. And I see Chris Gear, the former assistant general manager, is now questioning what they're doing with Jack Rathbone, and he certainly would have some intelligence from being behind the scenes and knowing the player and the expectations on that player. It felt like this club had committed to Rathbone with the one-way contract, and it looked like he had graduated from the American Hockey League. And now, if you're just going to take him on a tour of North America, like, that doesn't help his development. Practicing with this team is, they don't practice much when they're out on a lengthy road trip like this one. I mean, it's a full team day off in Minnesota, and it's unlikely that they're going to plug him in for the tail end as they continue to look for a victory here. So if he's not going to play, then get him to the minors. He's waiver exempt. But if you're putting him back in the American Hockey League, then what are we doing here? Like, what was last year all about? What was the commitment to this player? He's 23 and a half. Like, he's not 19 or 20 years of age. And I do think that, for a team that has been as porous defensively, like, you're telling me that he can't crack this lineup to have a look and see what he looks like? And again,
If not now, when? You're
overusing Quinn Hughes because you don't feel that you've got other guys to transport the puck, and you just got to keep playing them when you're trailing in these games. Like, Jack Rathbone may not be the savior, but he might be part of the solution instead of these guys that are either nearing their 30s or in their 30s now. And it's just the deference to the veteran guys for a team that's not winning with the veteran guys. I don't know. I'm in a bit of a loss there. I do not get it.
Last question from me, Jeff, building off today's welcome, Matt. Has there ever been a must-win home opener? And what kind of reaction do they get Saturday night if they pull in their 0-4-1 or 0-3-2?
Yeah, I think that they're going to hear it. I mean, this is a savvy fan base that was promised better. It was promised a better start, that this group, top to bottom, learned from last year how important games in October are, and that they mean every bit as much as the games in April, and they do. And if they flush another one in Minnesota to a winless team, Columbus was a winless team that had barely scored. Columbus had 5 goals coming into the game without Patrick Laine, and they get 4 last night, 2 from defensemen. I think that's another story here, is that Darnell Nurse and John Carlson, and last night 2 Blue Jacket defensemen score, and I said Kyle Burroughs, the only defenseman on the Vancouver Canucks to score so far. So it's not just that the defenders don't defend, but there's nothing that says your defenders can't chip in offensively too. And so it kind of cuts both ways in that regard. Whatever the case, it just sort of underscores this defense group that the Canucks are going with, underwhelming and underachieving. And I think the fan base has every right to voice its displeasure, even if it is just the 6th game of the season. But we've all covered enough home openers. Like, home openers are supposed to be a celebration. They're supposed to, be about the optimism of the season ahead. And last year they went out on a 6-game road trip. They salvaged it with a couple of late wins. They came home 3-2-1, and then the problems began. And I've made the point with you guys as well that their road record last year was just fine. They were 20-16-5. Their road record was enough to get them into the playoffs. The fact that they lost more on home ice than they won, they were 20-14-7. So ultimately it's 20 wins and 21 losses. They have to be a much better home ice team this year. And it's got to start on Saturday against Buffalo, and it's got to carry on from there. And if they come home without a victory, I don't think they get the benefit of the doubt that this fan base, team spending to the cap, and all the talk in the offseason about getting it right. I think it sets up a very interesting dynamic, and one I'll be curious to see and hear when they hit the ice against the Sabres on Saturday.
As Brock Jackson of Asoyas Radio pointed, has a team ever been booed onto the ice? And they get individually introduced too, right, Jeff? So the possibilities here are quite cringy. Marvelous stuff for this. Thank you, my friend. We'll catch up later this week.
All right, guys. Thanks.